The metal corridors of the Zephyrian battlecruiser Void Harvester echoed with the heavy footsteps of Captain Thek's car. His forearms moved with practiced efficiency as he reviewed the datapad showing their latest capture. The human transport vessel had been easy prey, floating dead in space with its engines cold and life support failing. Another pathetic human ship, Thek's car muttered to his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Velnash. Their technology is barely worth our time. Velnash nodded, her scaled head bobbing in agreement. The cargo manifest shows basic supplies and raw materials, Captain. Nothing of real value, but there are prisoners aboard. Prisoners? Thek's car's yellow eyes gleamed with mild interest. What kind? Mixed species, sir. Mostly humans, but a few others. They were being transported to some penal colony on the outer rim. The captain waved a dismissive hand. Process them with the others. Maybe we can sell them at the next slave market. The boarding party had already moved the prisoners to the detention center deep within the ship. Among them was a human who caught the attention of Guard Sergeant Creston. Unlike the other prisoners who whimpered and begged, this one remained completely silent. The human was tall by his species standards, with dark hair marked by streaks of gray. Scars crossed his face and hands, telling stories of violence and survival. He wore the same gray prisoner uniform as the others, but something about him was different. He stood straight, shoulders back, even with shackles on his wrists. You, Creston barked at the human. What's your name? The human looked up slowly, meeting the alien's gaze without fear. Marcus. Marcus what? Just Marcus. Creston studied the human's file on his datapad. The record showed he was a convicted criminal being transferred between prison facilities. Nothing special, just another lawbreaker in gray clothes. Your crime? Creston asked. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I was between assignments. The answer made no sense to Creston, but humans often spoke strangely. He shoved Marcus into cell block 7 with a dozen other prisoners from various species. The cell was cramped and smelled of fear and unwashed bodies. As the days passed, Marcus became a puzzle to his guards. While other prisoners complained about the poor food and harsh treatment, he ate without comment. When fights broke out among the prisoners, he stayed out of them. But somehow the violence always stopped when he looked at the fighters. He never raised his voice or threatened anyone, but the other prisoners gave him space. What worried Creston was how Marcus watched everything. His eyes tracked the guard rotations, counted footsteps in the corridors, and memorized faces. When guards passed his cell, Marcus would nod politely, but his gaze would follow them, noting their weapons and equipment. That human makes me nervous, Guard Plixtar told Creston during their break. He's always watching, always thinking. Creston laughed. He's just a prisoner. What can he do locked in a cage? But Plixtar wasn't convinced. I've seen many prisoners. This one is different. The way he moves, the way he looks at us, it's like he's not really trapped. Sub-Commander Velnash visited the detention center 3 days after the capture. She wanted to see the prisoners herself before they reached their destination. Most cowered when she approached their cells, but Marcus simply stood and nodded respectfully. I'm told you're uncooperative, she said through the translator device. I answer questions when asked, Marcus replied. I follow your rules. How is that uncooperative? Velnash studied his file again. You were convicted of sedition against the Earth government. The records say many things. Do you deny it? Marcus shrugged. I served my time. I was being transferred to complete my sentence when your ship found us. Something in his tone bothered Velnash. There was no bitterness, no anger about his situation. Most prisoners held rage toward their captors or their fate. This human seemed almost patient. Tell me about Earth's defenses, she demanded. I wouldn't know anything current. I've been in prison for months. But you know something, Marcus smiled slightly. Every human knows something about defenses. We're a careful species. That evening, Velnash reviewed the prisoner manifest again. Marcus's transport ship had been carrying 12 convicted criminals to a prison colony called New Siberia. The paperwork looked authentic, complete with biometric scans and criminal records. But something felt wrong. She decided to run a deeper check on Marcus's background. The basic criminal database showed his conviction for speaking against the Earth military 6 months ago. He had been sentenced to hard labor and was being moved to serve his time. Everything seemed normal, but Velnash had learned not to trust everything that seemed normal. Captain Thek's car visited the detention center on the 4th day. He liked to intimidate new prisoners, especially humans. Their species was young and weak, barely able to leave their home system. Seeing their fear reminded him of Zephyrian superiority. Most prisoners pressed themselves against the back walls of their cells when he approached. Marcus simply turned to face him, hands clasped behind his back in a relaxed posture. "So you're the quiet one," Thexkar said. "I'm told you don't cause trouble." "Trouble serves no purpose here," Marcus replied. "Smart. You understand your place." Marcus nodded. "I understand many things," the captain laughed. "Like what?" "Like the fact that this ship carries about 3,000 crew members, based on the meal schedules and shift changes. Your main engines run on trilithium cores, judging by the vibration patterns in the hull, and you're heading toward the Kepler system, based on the star patterns visible through the observation ports." Thexkar's amusement died. "How do you know these things?" "I observe. I listen, I think. These are not crimes. For a prisoner, you seem very informed about military matters." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "Knowledge isn't restricted to free men, Captain." Later that night, Thexkar called Velnash to his quarters. "That human prisoner bothers me. Marcus, he's been quiet and cooperative. Too quiet. Too cooperative. Run a full background check on him. Not just the criminal records. Check everything." Velnash hesitated. "The full military databases? That would require authorization from Fleet Command." "Then get it. Something about that human doesn't fit." As Velnash left to begin her investigation, she didn't notice the small listening device Marcus had somehow placed near the captain's door during his transfer to the detention center earlier that day. In his cell, Marcus lay on his narrow bunk and smiled in the darkness. The pieces were moving exactly as he had planned. The Void Harvester continued through space, its crew unaware that their most valuable prisoner was not the broken criminal he appeared to be. Marcus closed his eyes and began counting. Soon, very soon, they would learn the truth about who they had captured, and then the real game would begin. Subcommander Velnash entered the interrogation chamber with confidence. She had broken dozens of prisoners from various species over her career. Humans were usually the easiest. Their emotional nature made them weak under pressure. Marcus sat calmly in the metal chair, his hands secured to the table. The interrogation room was designed to intimidate with its harsh lighting and bare walls. Most prisoners would be sweating by now, but Marcus looked as relaxed as if he were having breakfast. "Your criminal record is interesting," Velnash began, placing a datapad on the table. "Sedition speaking against your government, encouraging rebellion among military personnel." "If you say so," Marcus replied. "I do say so. The records are very clear." She leaned forward. "But I want to know about Earth's current military strength. I was in prison. I wouldn't know anything current." Velnash activated a device that sent painful electrical pulses through the chair. Most species would scream and beg for mercy. Marcus grunted slightly, but his expression barely changed. "Let's try again. Earth's military capabilities." Marcus was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider his words. "Earth has always believed in being prepared. We have ships, weapons, trained personnel. Nothing special by galactic standards. Numbers." "I want specific numbers. I wouldn't have access to specific numbers." "I was a political prisoner, not a military officer." The lie detector built into the chair remained completely silent. Either Marcus was telling the truth or he had incredible control over his biological responses. Velnash tried a different approach. "Tell me about the defense platforms around Earth. There are some orbital stations. Most governments have them. What kind of weapons do they carry? Plasma cannons, missile systems, the usual things." Again, the lie detector stayed quiet. But something bothered Velnash about his answers. They were technically truthful but felt incomplete, like he was carefully choosing what to reveal. "You seem to know a lot about military equipment for a political prisoner." Marcus shrugged. "I pay attention to the news. Most citizens know basic facts about their defenses." Over the next 3 hours, Velnash tried every interrogation technique she knew. Physical pain, psychological pressure, even drugs that were supposed to make humans compliant. Nothing worked. Marcus answered every question in the same calm, patient tone. What frustrated her most was that he clearly knew more than he was saying. When she mentioned specific ship classes, his eyes showed recognition. When she described weapon systems, he nodded as if familiar with them. But he never revealed anything useful. You're wasting both our time, Marcus finally said during a break. I've told you what I know. I can't give you information I don't have. I think you have plenty of information. You're just choosing not to share it. Even if that were true, why would I help you? You captured me. You're holding me prisoner and you plan to sell me as a slave. What do I gain by cooperating? Velnash had to admit he had a point. But something about this human's behavior suggested he wasn't just being stubborn. He was protecting something important. She decided to try a different angle. Tell me about your time in prison. What was it like? Marcus seemed more willing to discuss this topic. Boring. Repetitive. You work, you eat, you sleep, you work again. How much to say? What kind of work did you do? Kitchen duty mostly. Some maintenance work. Whatever they needed. Did you have contact with other prisoners? Of course. Hard to avoid in a prison. What did you talk about? The usual things. Family, home, regrets. Marcus paused. Many of the prisoners were former military. They had interesting stories. Velnash felt a chill. If Marcus had spent months talking to former military personnel, he could have learned far more than any civilian should know. What kind of stories? War stories? Everyone who's been in combat has them. Battles they fought, friends they lost, mistakes that cost lives. Did they tell you about military procedures, tactics, technology? Sometimes. When you're locked up with nothing to do, people talk about their past. The interrogation continued for 2 more hours. Slowly, Velnash began to understand how Marcus knew so much. According to his story, he had spent months in close contact with dozens of former Earth military personnel. They had shared knowledge, experience, and classified information to pass the time. But the more she learned, the more suspicious she became. Marcus's questions during these supposed conversations were very specific and well-informed. He knew exactly what to ask to get the most useful military intelligence. You asked very smart questions for a simple political prisoner, she observed. I was curious, and I had time to think about what I wanted to know. Or you knew exactly what questions to ask because you had military training yourself. Marcus smiled slightly. Is that what you think? I think there's more to your story than sedition and political protests. There's more to everyone's story. But that doesn't make the official records wrong. Velnash ended the session feeling frustrated. Marcus had revealed nothing useful about Earth's defenses, but he had demonstrated knowledge that worried her. Either he was the smartest political prisoner she had ever met, or he was something else entirely. She returned to her quarters and began reviewing the session recordings. Marcus's answers were consistent, his body language calm and controlled, too controlled for a normal prisoner. That night she made a decision. She would request access to the full military intelligence database and run Marcus's biometrics against every file they had. If he was hiding his true identity, she would find it. Meanwhile, in his cell, Marcus lay on his bunk and listened to the conversations around him. The other prisoners whispered about rumors they had heard, about rescue attempts and prisoner exchanges. None of them knew that their quiet cellmate was counting days and making calculations. He had given Velnash just enough truth to satisfy her curiosity, while hiding everything that mattered. The interrogation had actually been useful for him. Her questions told him exactly what the Zephyrians knew about Earth's defenses, and more importantly, what they didn't know. Earth had changed a lot in 6 months. New weapons, new ships, new tactics. But the Zephyrians were still thinking about the old Earth. The weak Earth that barely had space travel. They were about to learn how much things had changed. Marcus closed his eyes and began his mental countdown. Soon, very soon, his ship would come looking for him. When it did, the Void Harvester would discover that they had made a terrible mistake. They thought they had captured a simple prisoner. They had actually captured Earth's most dangerous weapon. Velnash stared at her computer screen in complete shock. The authorization to access the full military intelligence database had finally come through after 2 days of waiting. She had expected to find more details about Marcus's criminal background, maybe evidence of minor military service in his past. Instead, she found something that made her blood turn cold. The biometric scan had matched Marcus to a file buried deep in the classified section of the Galactic military database. Not just any file, but one marked with the highest security clearance. The face looking back at her from the screen was the same quiet prisoner sitting in cell block 7. But the name attached was not Marcus the political criminal. Admiral Marcus Chen Volkov, hero of Kepler Station, the ghost of the Outer Rim. Velnash's hands shook as she read through the file. 6 months ago, this man had commanded the defense of Kepler Station when 3 full Zephyrian battle groups attacked the human colony. He should have been completely outmatched. The humans only had 2 old destroyers and a handful of defense platforms, but Marcus Chen Volkov had turned that battle into a nightmare for the Zephyrian fleet. Using tactics no one had seen before, he had made his small force fight like a much larger one. His ships moved in patterns that confused Zephyrian targeting systems. His weapons struck from impossible angles. Most terrifying of all, he seemed to predict every move the Zephyrian commanders would make. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Zephyrian fleet had lost 2 heavy cruisers and 5 destroyers. Thousands of Zephyrian warriors were dead, and worst of all, Marcus had accomplished his real goal. During those 18 hours, every human civilian on Kepler Station had been evacuated to safety. The official report stated that Admiral Chen Volkov had died when his flagship exploded during the final exchange. His body was never recovered, but no one could have survived that explosion. The humans had mourned him as a hero and martyr, but he hadn't died. Somehow he had survived and been captured by pirates or criminals. The prisoner transport records were clearly false, designed to hide his identity while he was being moved. Velnash felt sick as she realized what this meant. They hadn't captured a simple criminal. They had the most dangerous human military mind in their detention center, and he had been studying their ship for a week. She immediately tried to contact Captain Thexkar, but he was in a command meeting. She left an urgent message and began reviewing everything Marcus had said and done since his capture. Every question he had asked, every observation he had made, every detail he had noticed. He had been gathering intelligence the entire time. The door to her quarters chimed. "Enter," she called, expecting to see Captain Thexkar. Instead, Guard Sergeant Creston stepped inside, looking worried. "Sub-Commander, we have a problem in the detention center." "What kind of problem?" "It's the human prisoner, Marcus. He's been asking questions." Velnash felt her stomach drop. "What kind of questions?" "He wanted to know about our destination. How long until we reach port? What happens to prisoners when we arrive?" Creston paused, but the way he asked, it wasn't like a worried prisoner. It was like a commander planning something. "Did you tell him anything?" "Just basic information. We'll reach the Kepler system in 3 days to rendezvous with the fleet. Standard prisoner processing after that." Creston looked confused. Why would he care about the Kepler system? There's nothing there but empty space and a dead human colony. Velnash closed her eyes. Of course Marcus would be interested in Kepler. It was the site of his greatest victory. Has he done anything else unusual? He's been talking to the other prisoners more. Asking about their capture, their ships, where they came from. Like he's putting together a map of the local area. And you let him? He's just a prisoner talking to other prisoners. I didn't think... Creston trailed off as he saw Velnash's expression. What's wrong? Who is this human? Before Velnash could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The red alert klaxon echoed through the corridors, followed by Captain Thexakar's voice over the communication system. "All crew to battle stations. We have detected an unknown vessel approaching at high speed." "This is not a drill." Velnash ran for the bridge, leaving a confused Creston behind. She had to tell the captain immediately what they were dealing with. But as she rushed through the corridors, a terrible thought occurred to her. What if Marcus's capture hadn't been an accident? What if he had allowed himself to be taken prisoner for some purpose she couldn't understand? On the bridge, Captain Thexakar stood before the main view screen, watching a small dot grow larger as it approached. The ship's sensors were having trouble getting clear readings, but whatever was coming toward them was moving faster than anything they had seen before. "Report," Thexkar ordered as Velnash arrived. "Unknown vessel, sir. Single ship, but it's using some kind of stealth technology." "We can barely track it. Size?" "Smaller than us, but not by much. Maybe a heavy cruiser or light battleship." Velnash grabbed the captain's arm. "Sir, I need to speak with you immediately." "It's about the prisoner, Marcus, not now. We have a tactical situation to deal with." "Sir, that tactical situation might be directly related to Marcus. He's not who we think he is." Thexkar looked at her with irritation. "What are you talking about?" "His real name is Admiral Marcus Chen Volkov. He's the human who destroyed half our fleet at Kepler Station 6 months ago." The bridge fell silent, Every officer turned to stare at Velnash in shock. "That's impossible," Thexkar said slowly.
Chen Volkov is dead.
"We saw his ship explode. The biometric scans don't lie, sir. It's him." Thexkar looked at the approaching ship on the view screen, then back at Velnash. "Are you suggesting that ship is coming for him?" "I think it's exactly what I'm suggesting." The communications officer suddenly straightened. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel." On screen. The view screen flickered and changed to show the bridge of an alien ship. But it wasn't alien to Velnash anymore. She recognized the design from intelligence reports. It was human, but unlike any human ship she had seen before, the technology looked years ahead of anything Earth was supposed to have. A human officer appeared on the screen. Young, professional, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. When he spoke, his voice was calm but carried an unmistakable threat. "Zephyrian vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Retribution. You are holding a prisoner who belongs to us. Return Admiral Chen Volkov immediately or face the consequences." Thexkar laughed, but it sounded forced. "You're in no position to make demands, human. This is a Zephyrian battlecruiser. Your single ship cannot threaten us." Captain Chen smiled, and that smile made Velnash shiver. "Admiral Chen Volkov taught us many things about warfare, Captain. One of them is that numbers don't always matter. You have 30 seconds to begin transfer procedures, or we will take him by force." The transmission ended. Thexkar stared at the blank screen for a moment, then began laughing. "One ship? They think one ship can threaten the Void Harvester? They have no idea what they're dealing with." But Velnash was looking at the sensor readings of the approaching human vessel. Something about its design bothered her. It moved like a living thing, predatory and confident, and its energy signatures were unlike anything in their databases. "Captain," she said quietly, "maybe we should consider their offer." "Never. We don't negotiate with inferior species." Thexkar turned to his weapons officer. "Target that ship. Prepare to fire." As the Void Harvester powered up its weapons, Velnash couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a terrible mistake. In the detention center below, Admiral Marcus Chen Volkov was probably smiling. The real battle was about to begin. Captain Thexkar felt confident as his weapons officer reported ready status on all systems. The Void Harvester was one of the most powerful ships in the Zephyrian fleet. Its plasma cannons could tear through most armor, and its shields could withstand massive punishment. One human ship, no matter how advanced, couldn't possibly threaten them. "Fire warning shots across their bow," he ordered. "Show them we mean business." The massive plasma cannons discharged, sending brilliant bolts of energy past the human ship. Any reasonable captain would take the hint and withdraw. Instead, the human vessel increased speed and began moving in a pattern that made no sense. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "the human ship is not responding to our warning. It's continuing to approach and—" "That's odd." "What's odd?" "Its movement pattern. It's not following any standard evasive maneuvers. It's almost like it's dancing." Velnash watched the human ship on the main screen with growing unease. The vessel moved with fluid grace, rolling and spinning in ways that should have made the crew inside sick from the gravitational forces. But somehow it maintained perfect course toward them. "How fast is it moving?" Thexkar demanded. 0.75 light speed and accelerating." "Sir, that should be impossible. No ship that size should be able to maintain those speeds without tearing itself apart." The communications officer looked up from his station. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from the human vessel. Put it through." Captain Chen appeared on the screen again. But this time she was standing in what looked like a command center that hummed with activity. Human crew members moved efficiently around stations filled with technology Velnash didn't recognize. "Last warning, Captain Thexkar. Return our admiral now." "Your admiral is our prisoner," Thexkar replied. "And your threats don't impress me." "You have one ship. I have a battle cruiser with enough firepower to destroy a small planet. Admiral Chen Volkov has taught us that firepower without wisdom is useless. But I don't expect you to understand that until it's too late." The transmission ended again. Thexkar's confidence was beginning to crack. "What does she mean by that?" "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "I'm detecting some kind of energy buildup from the human ship, but it's not matching any weapon signatures in our database." "Unknown weapons?" "Unknown everything, sir. The energy patterns are completely different from anything we've seen." Velnash stepped closer to the captain. Sir, I strongly recommend we consider negotiating. If this is really Admiral Chen Volkov's ship, they didn't come here unprepared. We don't negotiate with humans, Thexkar snapped. Weapons officer, target their engines. Full power. The Void Harvester's main gun swiveled toward the approaching human ship and fired. The plasma bolts that erupted from the cannons were powerful enough to vaporize most vessels. They streaked through space with deadly accuracy, and somehow the human ship wasn't there when they arrived. What happened? Thexkar demanded. Did we miss? Negative, sir. Direct hit confirmed, but... The tactical officer stared at his instruments in confusion. The human ship is still intact. Our plasma bolts seem to pass right through it. That's impossible. Sir, the human vessel is returning fire. What came from the human ship was unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. Instead of plasma or missiles, streams of what looked like liquid metal shot toward them. The projectiles moved in impossible curves, bending through space as if guided by invisible hands. The first impacts against the Void Harvester's shields sent shockwaves through the entire ship. The energy barriers that should have deflected any attack flickered and sparked. Shield strength dropping to 60%, the engineer reported. How is that possible? Those projectiles shouldn't have that much kinetic energy. Return fire. All weapons. The battlecruiser unleashed everything it had. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, particle beams, and graviton torpedoes. The space between the two ships lit up like a star-going nova. But the human ship continued its impossible dance, weaving between the attacks with movements that defied physics. When weapons did strike it, they seemed to slide off its hull without causing damage. Sir, Velnash said urgently, we need to retreat. This isn't a normal battle. I will not retreat from a single human ship. Another volley of the strange metal projectiles struck the Void Harvester. This time they punched straight through the shields as if they weren't there. The ship's hull groaned as the impact sent vibrations through every deck. Hull breach on Deck 7, damage control reported. Sections 12 through 15 are venting atmosphere. How are they penetrating our shields? The science officer looked up from his station with wide eyes. Captain, I think I understand what's happening. Those projectiles aren't just metal. They're somehow phasing in and out of normal space. They exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. That's impossible with current technology. Not with current known technology. But if someone had developed trans-dimensional weapons, another hit rocked the ship. The lights flickered and several consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Sir, the communications officer said, the human ship is hailing us again. Put it through. Captain Chen appeared on the screen, but now she was wearing what looked like battle armor. Captain Thexkar, you've had multiple opportunities to avoid this. Your ship is taking damage that we can repair, but your crew's lives are being lost unnecessarily. How are you doing this? Thexkar demanded. What kind of weapons are those? The kind that Admiral Chen Volkov helped us design. He spent 6 months working with our best scientists and engineers. Every mistake your people made at Kepler Station became a lesson for us to learn from. Velnash felt a chill of understanding. The prisoner transport. It was fake. You've had him all along. Captain Chen smiled grimly. Admiral Chen Volkov volunteered for this mission. He wanted to see how your people treat prisoners, how you think, how you fight. Every day he spent on your ship, he was gathering intelligence and transmitting it to us. That's impossible. We monitored all communications. Did you monitor trans-dimensional communication frequencies? No, because you don't even know they exist yet. Another barrage from the human ship struck the Void Harvester. This time the impacts were more precise. The weapons targeted specific systems. Engines, weapons, life support. Not trying to destroy the ship, but to disable it. Sir, the engineer reported, main engines are offline. Weapon systems are failing across all decks. We're losing life support on multiple levels. Thexkar stared at the view screen where the human ship continued its graceful, deadly dance around his crippled battlecruiser. In less than 10 minutes, they had gone from confident predators to helpless prey. Sir, Velnash said quietly, we need to surrender. Our crew is dying. For the first time since the battle began, Thexkar looked uncertain. How did they become so powerful so quickly? Because, Velnash said, watching the human ship prepare for another attack, they had Admiral Chen Volkov to teach them, and we gave him a week to study everything about us. The realization hit Thexkar like a physical blow. They hadn't captured Earth's greatest military mind. He had captured them. The Void Harvester drifted helplessly in space, its massive hull scarred and bleeding atmosphere from dozens of precise wounds. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across the bridge as Captain Thexakar faced the worst defeat of his career. "Damage report," he said quietly. "Main engines destroyed," the engineer replied. "Weapon systems offline. Life support failing on 8 decks. We have maybe 6 hours of air left." "Casualties?" 43 dead, over 200 wounded. Thexakar closed his eyes. In his arrogance, he had led his crew into a slaughter. The human ship continued to orbit them like a predator watching wounded prey, but it had stopped firing. They could have finished the Void Harvester easily, but they were waiting. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we're receiving another transmission." "Put it through." Captain Chen appeared on the screen one final time. Behind her, the human crew worked calmly at their stations, completely professional despite having just destroyed one of the most powerful ships in the galaxy. "Captain Thexakar, this is your final opportunity. Surrender your ship and prepare to transfer Admiral Chen Volkov. We will provide assistance for your wounded and safe passage for your crew." Thexakar wanted to refuse, to fight until the end like a true Zephyrian warrior. But he looked around his bridge at his injured and frightened crew members. His pride wasn't worth their lives. "What guarantee do I have that you won't execute us all?" Admiral Chen Volkov's word. He believes in treating prisoners with honor, even when they haven't shown the same courtesy to him. Belnash stepped forward. "Captain, we should accept. Our crew needs medical attention we can't provide." Thexakar nodded slowly. "Very well. We surrender." The response came immediately. "Stand by for boarding. Any aggressive action will result in your ship's destruction." The transmission ended, and within minutes, the Zephyrians watched in amazement as the human ship performed a docking maneuver that should have been impossible. Instead of using docking ports, the vessel seemed to phase partially into the Void Harvester's hull, creating a perfect seal. The detention center doors opened with a soft hiss, and Marcus Chen Volkov walked out of his cell with the calm confidence of a man who had never truly been a prisoner. The other prisoners stared in shock as human Marines in advanced combat armor followed him into the corridor. Guard Sergeant Creston dropped his weapon and backed against the wall. You're not a criminal." Marcus paused and looked at the alien who had guarded him for a week. "No, Sergeant, I'm not. But you treated me fairly within the limits of your orders. I'll remember that." The Marines quickly secured the detention center and began processing the other prisoners. To everyone's surprise, they provided immediate medical attention to injured Zephyrians and treated all captives with professional courtesy. Marcus made his way to the bridge, followed by a small escort of human soldiers. When the doors opened, every Zephyrian officer turned to stare at the man they had thought was just another prisoner. "Captain Thexakar," Marcus said politely. "Thank you for the hospitality." Thexakar couldn't hide his confusion. "You're thanking me? We held you prisoner for a week. You gave me exactly what I needed. Time to study your ship, your crew, your tactics, and your technology. Plus, I learned how Zephyrians think about humans." That information was invaluable. Velnash stepped forward. "The prisoner transport, it was all fake?" "Completely fabricated. We knew you would eventually capture one of our ships in this sector. We made sure that when you did, I would be aboard disguised as a prisoner." "But why? What was the point?" Marcus walked to the main view screen and looked out at his ship, the UES Retribution. 6 months ago at Kepler Station, I fought your people with old technology and outdated tactics. We won, but barely. I knew that wouldn't be enough for the next battle." He turned back to face the Zephyrian officers. "So I needed to understand how you think, how you fight, what your weaknesses are. The best way to do that was to become your prisoner and observe you from the inside." "And the weapons? That impossible technology?" Marcus smiled. "Human innovation, Captain. When we encounter a problem we can't solve with current technology, we invent new technology. Your trans-dimensional shield seemed impenetrable, so we developed trans-dimensional weapons. Your speed and maneuverability were superior, so we created new propulsion systems." Captain Chen's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral, medical teams are ready to assist the wounded. Engineering crews are standing by to provide life support. Proceed, Captain Chen. Marcus looked around the bridge. Your crew will be treated well and returned to Zephyrian space unharmed. But I want you to carry a message to your fleet commanders. What message? Earth is no longer the weak, struggling colony world you remember. We learn from every encounter, adapt to every challenge, and grow stronger with each battle. Today, you've seen what we can accomplish in 6 months. Imagine what we'll be capable of in a year. Thexkar felt a chill. Are you threatening us? I'm informing you. Humanity doesn't want war, Captain. We want to explore, to learn, to build a better future. But if others force conflict upon us, we will meet that challenge with everything we have. Over the next several hours, human medical teams worked alongside Zephyrian doctors to treat the wounded. Human engineers helped restore basic life support to the damaged ship. The professionalism and efficiency of the human crew impressed even the most prejudiced Zephyrian officers. As the Retribution prepared to depart, Marcus stood in the airlock between the two ships. Captain Thexkar had come to see him off personally. I don't understand you humans, Thexkar said. You defeated us completely, but you're helping us repair our ship and treating our wounded. Because that's who we are, Marcus replied. We fight when we must, but we don't take pleasure in causing unnecessary suffering. Your crew followed orders. They don't deserve to die for their commander's mistakes. And what about your people? Will they be content to remain peaceful? Marcus considered the question carefully. We will never start a war, Captain, but we will always be ready to finish one. The airlock sealed, and the Retribution disengaged from the Void Harvester. As the human ship prepared to jump to hyperspace, Captain Chen opened a final communication channel. Captain Thexkar, your ship's engines should be operational within 12 hours. We've left detailed repair instructions for your engineering teams. Safe travels. The Retribution accelerated away from the crippled Zephyrian ship, its form shimmering, as it activated the new propulsion systems that allowed it to move between dimensions. Within seconds, it had vanished completely, leaving only empty space. On the bridge of the Void Harvester, Velnash stared at the spot where the human ship had been. What have we done? Thexkar understood her meaning. For generations, the galaxy had seen humans as a minor species barely worth notice. Today, they had learned that humanity had become something far more dangerous. A species that could turn imprisonment into intelligence gathering. That could transform defeat into education. That could take everything their enemies did to them and use it to become stronger. We've awakened something, Thexkar said quietly. And I'm not sure the galaxy is ready for what humanity is becoming. In the depths of space, the UES Retribution continued its journey home. On the bridge, Admiral Marcus Chen Volkov reviewed the intelligence he had gathered during his week as a prisoner, ship specifications, tactical doctrines, crew psychology, technological capabilities. Everything needed to prepare Earth's defenses for the larger conflict he knew was coming. Humanity had been underestimated for the last time. The next species that threatened them would discover that humans didn't just survive their challenges, they evolved beyond them.